Mirai stepped off the transport shuttle and felt her boots touch the metal floor of the Galactic Academy station. The artificial gravity was lighter than Earth's, making her feel oddly weightless. Beside her, June adjusted his bag and looked around with wide eyes. Neither of them had ever seen so many aliens in one place before. The station was massive. Hallways stretched in every direction, filled with creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled on 6 or 8. A few floated through the air using methods Mirai couldn't understand. The noise was incredible. Dozens of languages mixed together in a constant buzz of sound. A tall, insect-like creature approached them. It had to be at least 7 feet tall, with green and gold plating covering its body. 4 arms hung at its sides, and its large eyes studied them carefully. "You are the humans?" it asked. The translator device in Mirai's ear converted the clicking sounds into Korean. "Yes," Mirai answered. "I'm Mirai, this is June. We're here for the Deathworld survival program." The creature's antennae twitched. "I am Sila. I will show you to orientation." Something in its voice sounded almost sympathetic. Mirai couldn't tell. Reading alien emotions was still new to her. They followed Sila through the winding corridors. Other students stared as they passed. Mirai heard whispers in languages her translator couldn't catch. She knew enough to understand the tone, though. Curiosity, amusement, some outright laughter. "Don't they have humans here?" June whispered to her in Korean. "A few instructors," Mirai replied quietly. "But we're the first students. They probably think we're weird." "They definitely think we're weird," June muttered. The orientation hall was huge. It looked like an amphitheater with curved rows of seats facing a central platform. The seats were designed for bodies of all types. Some had spaces for tails. Others had perches instead of chairs. Mirai and June found 2 human-sized seats near the back. The room filled quickly. Mirai counted students from at least 30 different species. Many were massive, with thick armor or dense muscle. Others were smaller but had claws, spikes, or other natural weapons. She noticed that she and June were among the smallest beings in the room. A creature entered from the main door, and the room went quiet. It was enormous, 8 feet tall, covered in dark gray scales with a long tail that swayed behind it. Its arms were thick as tree trunks, ending in clawed hands. The head was reptilian, with rows of sharp teeth visible when it opened its mouth to speak. "I am Instructor Vector," the creature announced. Its voice was deep and rumbling. "Welcome to the Deathworld survival program. You are here because you come from dangerous worlds. Worlds that should have killed you. Worlds where most species would die within days." The instructor paced across the platform. Every step made the floor vibrate slightly. "This program will teach you to survive anywhere, any planet, any condition. You will learn combat, strategy, resource management, and teamwork. Those who pass will be qualified for the most dangerous missions in the galaxy." Mirai felt excitement building in her chest. This was exactly what she had hoped for. A chance to prove that humans belonged among the stars. "However," Vector continued, "we must be realistic about abilities. Some species are naturally stronger, faster, better equipped for survival. Training will be adjusted based on your natural capabilities." A rumble of agreement went through the crowd. Most students seemed to think this made sense. "Before we begin, let me introduce our species." Vector gestured to a holographic display. Images of different aliens appeared, along with information about their homeworlds. The Krell, Vector's species. Apex predators from a world of endless jungles and megafauna. Gravity twice that of Earth. Atmosphere thick with moisture, the Threxians. Bear-like creatures from a frozen moon. They could survive temperatures that would freeze human blood solid. The Scar, insectoid warriors with natural armor plating. Their world was all desert and volcanic rock. Species after species appeared. Each one sounded more terrifying than the last. Finally, the display showed Earth, and finally the humans, Vector said. His tone had changed. It was almost gentle, like he was speaking to children. "From Earth. A challenging world, yes, but humans survived through intelligence and technology. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced strength or speed. They are fragile by galactic standards." Mirai felt her jaw tighten. "Fragile? Therefore," my Vector continued, "humans will participate in modified training. We cannot risk injury by placing them in full-contact exercises with naturally superior species." Murmurs spread through the room. Some sounded sympathetic. Others sounded amused. From somewhere in the front rows, Mirai heard loud laughter. A massive Krell student stood up. He was even bigger than Instructor Vector, with scars across his scales and gold bands around his arms. "Instructor," he called out, "are we really going to pretend these softskins belong in this program?" More laughter. Even some of the non-predator species joined in. "Raxel," Vector said warningly, but the big Krell continued. "Look at them." Raxel pointed directly at Mirai and June. "They're tiny. They have no claws, no teeth, soft skin that tears easily. They're prey species that got lucky with opposable thumbs. This is a waste of time." The room erupted in noise. Some students agreed loudly. Others tried to defend humans, though their arguments were weak. Mirai heard phrases like, "They're trying their best and we should give them a chance," which somehow felt worse than the mockery. June touched her arm gently. "Don't," he whispered. "It's not worth it." Mirai took a deep breath. He was right. Getting angry wouldn't help. But she memorized Raxel's face. That arrogant smirk. Those dismissive eyes. She'd remember. "Enough." Vector's voice boomed across the hall. "We will treat all students with respect. Raxel, sit down." The big Krell sat, still grinning. He'd made his point. The rest of orientation passed in a blur. Vector explained the schedule, the rules, the training areas. Mirai barely listened. Her mind was elsewhere, planning, calculating. When the session ended, students filed out in groups. Many of the predator species walked together, their body language confident and relaxed. The smaller species stayed in their own groups, quieter and more cautious. As Mirai and June headed for the exit, Raxel deliberately stepped into their path. He didn't say anything, just stood there, forcing them to walk around him. His friends laughed. Mirai met his eyes as she passed. She didn't look away, didn't show fear, just looked at him calmly, studying him the way she'd been trained to study opponents. Raxel's smile faltered for just a moment. Then it returned, wider than before. "Careful, little human," he said. "You might break." "Thanks for the concern," Mirai replied evenly. She walked past without another word. Outside in the corridor, June let out a breath he'd been holding. "That guy's going to be a problem." "Maybe," Mirai said. They walked toward the human quarters assigned to a small section of the station. "Or maybe he's going to learn something." "Learn what?" Mirai thought about her years in the Korean DMZ. About the mutated animals that had adapted to survive in toxic wasteland. About the combat training that had turned her from a scared teenager into an instructor. About every lesson Earth had taught her about survival. That being underestimated, she said quietly, is sometimes an advantage. June looked at her sideways. "You're planning something." "Not yet," Mirai said. "But I'm watching, and waiting, and learning everything I can about Krell anatomy." They reached their quarters and entered. The space was small but comfortable, designed for human needs. Mirai dropped her bag and immediately pulled up her datapad, accessing the station's library. "What are you looking for?" June asked. "Everything," Mirai said, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Krell physiology, bone structure,
joint limitations,
muscle attachment points, everything." June smiled slightly. "You know, when you get that look in your eyes, I almost feel sorry for whoever you're focused on." "Don't feel sorry for him," Mirai said, pulling up a detailed diagram of Krell's skeletal structure. "Feel sorry for anyone who thinks humans are prey." She studied the diagram carefully. The Krell were strong, yes. Their bones were dense, their muscles powerful. But every species had weaknesses. Every body had leverage points. Every joint had limits. She just had to find them. Outside their window, the station rotated slowly, giving them a view of the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. The world that had forged humanity through millions of years of being hunted, outsmarted, and forced to adapt. Raxel thought humans were weak because they had no claws. He was about to discover what humans had instead. The first week of training was exactly as insulting as Mirai had expected. While the other students practiced combat techniques and survival skills, she and June were given basic exercises. Stretching, light cardio, practice with padded dummies that couldn't fight back. Instructor Vector watched her sometimes. She could feel his eyes on her, assessing. But he never moved them to the advanced groups. The message was clear. Humans were too fragile for real training. The worst part wasn't the easy exercises. It was the looks from other students. Some seemed genuinely concerned for human safety, which was somehow more frustrating than mockery. Others, especially Raxel and his group, made a game of demonstrating their superiority. On the third day, Raxel arm wrestled a Threxian in the cafeteria. The bear-like alien was massive, easily 600 pounds of muscle and fur. The match lasted 30 seconds before Raxel slammed the Threxian's arm down so hard it cracked the metal table. Any other challengers? Raxel had called out, looking directly at Mirai. She'd continued eating her meal, not reacting. But she'd watched, studied his form, his technique, the way his muscles moved, the angle of his elbow. June excelled in the academic portions of the program. His linguistics background made him valuable in communication exercises. Several alien students actually sought him out for help with translation problems. He was making friends, building bridges. Mirai was different. She was polite but distant. She spent her free time in the station's library, researching, or in the gym, training alone after hours when no one could see, or watching combat footage from previous academy classes. Professor Harin, the human xenobiology instructor, found her in the library one evening. The older woman sat down across from her without asking. "You're angry," Harin said simply. "I'm focused," Mirai replied, not looking up from her datapad. "Mirai, I know your record. I know what you did in the DMZ. I know you were one of the youngest combat instructors in Korean military history." Harin leaned forward. "But this is different. These aren't humans. Their biology is—" "I know their biology," Mirai interrupted. She turned her datapad around, showing the detailed notes she'd compiled. Krell have incredible linear strength but limited joint flexibility. Their elbows lock at specific angles. Their wrist rotation is restricted by their scale plating. Their center of gravity is high because of their tail structure. Harin studied the notes, her expression unreadable. "You're planning to fight one, only if provoked." Mirai, "Professor, with respect, humans didn't become Earth's dominant species by being the strongest. We became dominant by being the smartest, by learning, by adapting, by finding weaknesses and exploiting them." Mirai's voice was calm but firm. "Every species in this academy underestimates us. Maybe it's time someone learned better." Harin was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "Just try not to cause a diplomatic incident. I'll do my best." The professor left and Mirai returned to her research. But she'd made her decision. She just needed the right opportunity. It came on day 7. The cafeteria was crowded during the evening meal. Students from all species gathered, eating foods suited to their biology. The noise was constant, a mix of conversations in dozens of languages. Mirai and June sat at their usual table near the back. June was talking excitedly about a breakthrough he'd made in translating an ancient Scar dialect. Mirai listened, genuinely interested despite her distraction. That's when Raxel's group entered. 5 Krell, all large and confident, moving through the crowd like they owned the space. Other students moved aside for them without being asked. Raxel saw June and changed direction. His friends followed, grinning. "Human," Raxel said, stopping beside their table. "You're sitting in our spot." June looked around. "This isn't assigned seating. It is now." Raxel reached out and casually knocked June's food tray off the table. It clattered across the floor, spilling rice and vegetables everywhere. The cafeteria went quiet. Everyone watching, Mirai stood up slowly. She was a full 2 feet shorter than Raxel. She had to tilt her head back to look at his face. "That was rude," she said quietly. Raxel laughed. "What are you going to do about it, Softskin? Cry, run to the instructors?" "Apologize to him," Mirai said. The laughter stopped. Raxel's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "You heard me. Apologize to June. Now." The entire cafeteria was watching now. No one moved. No one spoke. Raxel leaned down, bringing his face close to Mirai's. His breath smelled like raw meat. "You're a prey species pretending to be a predator. It's embarrassing. Go back to your soft little world before you get hurt." Mirai didn't flinch, didn't back away. She looked directly into his reptilian eyes and smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that said she knew something he didn't. "Arm wrestling," she said clearly. "You and me. Right here, right now. When I win, you apologize. And humans get full access to advanced combat training." The cafeteria erupted. Voices overlapped in excitement and disbelief. This was insane. This was suicide. A human couldn't possibly beat a Krell in a test of strength. Raxel's confusion lasted only a moment before he started laughing. His friends joined in. Soon half the cafeteria was laughing. "You want to arm wrestle me?" Raxel asked between laughs. "Little human, I could snap your arm like a twig." "Then you should win easily," Mary said. "Unless you're scared?" The laughter died. Raxel's face darkened. "Scared? Of you?" "Prove it." Raxel stared at her. She could see the calculations behind his eyes. If he refused, he'd look weak. If he accepted, he'd win effortlessly and humiliate the humans once and for all. "Fine," he said. "But when you lose, both humans leave combat training permanently. Agreed?" "Mirai, no," June started, but she cut him off. "Agreed." Someone ran to get Instructor Vector. The crowd grew as word spread through the station. Students poured in from other sections, wanting to see the spectacle. They formed a circle around a large table. Vector arrived, looking annoyed. "What is this?" "A challenge, Instructor," Raxel said smugly. "The human wants to test her strength against mine." Vector looked at Mirai. "This is foolish. You'll be injured." "I accept the risk," Mirai said. "I cannot allow—" "With respect, Instructor, you told us this program is about surviving against superior opponents. Isn't that what I'm doing?" Vector's jaw tightened. He couldn't argue with her logic without contradicting his own teachings. "Very well. But there will be medical staff present. The match ends at first sign of injury." They cleared the table. Raxel sat down on one side, his massive arm resting on the surface. His forearm was as thick as Mirai's thigh. His clawed hand could easily crush hers. Mirai sat across from him. Her arm looked like a child's next to his. The crowd pressed closer. Mirai spotted faces she recognized. Scylla, the mantid who'd shown them around on their first day. Thrak, another Krell who seemed to be Raxel's main rival. Dozens of others, all watching with various expressions of anticipation, concern, or amusement. June pushed through to her side. "Are you sure about this?" he whispered in Korean. "Trust me," she replied in the same language. "I do. I just hope you're right about Krell anatomy." "So do I." Vector positioned himself as referee. Standard arm wrestling rules. First to pin their opponent's hand to the table wins. Ready? Mirai placed her hand in Raxel's. His clawed fingers wrapped completely around hers. She could feel the raw power in his grip, the strength that could easily break bones. She looked up at his face. He was grinning, confident, already celebrating his victory. "Ready," she said calmly. "Ready," Raxel rumbled. "Begin." Raxel applied pressure immediately. Not his full strength, but enough to test her. Enough to show the crowd how hopeless this was. Mirai's arm didn't move. Raxel's grin faltered. He applied more force. Real force now, the kind that had crushed metal tables and broken arms before. Mirai's arm trembled. The muscles in her shoulders stood out. Sweat beaded on her forehead. But she didn't budge. The cafeteria went completely silent. Raxel snarled and threw his full strength into it. The table groaned under the pressure. His scales bristled with effort, and Mirai smiled. In her research, she'd learned something crucial about Krell physiology. Their incredible strength came from their straight-line muscle structure. But that same structure limited their flexibility. Their elbows could lock at only certain angles. And if you forced them past those angles, Mirai suddenly shifted, not backward but to the side. She changed the angle of pressure, using technique instead of opposing his strength directly. She forced his arm into a position his elbow couldn't handle. Raxel's eyes widened in surprise. Then in pain. Crack. The sound echoed through the cafeteria like a gunshot. Raxel's arm bent wrong, his elbow joint hyperextending beyond its natural range. The bone broke cleanly, and his roar of pain shook the walls. Mirai pinned his hand to the table. "Winner," Vector announced, his voice shocked. Medical staff rushed forward, surrounding Raxel. He clutched his broken arm, his face twisted in agony and disbelief. Mirai stood up. She looked at the crowd of stunned aliens. Hundreds of eyes stared back at her. No one moved. No one spoke. She rolled her shoulders, cracked her knuckles, and let that same dangerous smile spread across her face. "That's one," she said clearly. "Who's next?" The cafeteria remained frozen. Mirai stood over the table where she'd just broken a Krell warrior's arm, her question hanging in the air. "Who's next?" Nobody answered. The predator species, the ones who'd been so confident just minutes ago, suddenly found other places to look. Some of the smaller species were clicking and chirping excitedly, though Mirai's translator couldn't quite catch the words. Instructor Vector finally broke the silence. Medical team, take Raxel to the infirmary. Everyone else return to your quarters now. The crowd dispersed slowly, students whispering to each other as they left. Mirai felt their stares following her. She'd changed something fundamental tonight, though she wasn't sure yet what. June appeared at her side, his expression caught between amazement and concern. That was either the smartest or the stupidest thing you've ever done. We'll find out which, Mirai said. Her hand was shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. She'd been confident in her research, but there'd still been a risk. If she'd miscalculated the angle, if Raxel's biology had been slightly different. You studied for this, June said. It wasn't a question. Every night for a week. Professor Harin approached, her face carefully neutral. Behind her stood a human man in a military uniform that Mirai didn't recognize. He was older, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. This is Medical Officer Kyung, Harin said. He needs to check you for injuries. I'm fine, Mirai said. But Kyung was already scanning her with a medical device. Muscle strain in your shoulder. Minor stress fractures in your wrist bones. You'll need treatment, he said. His tone was professional, but Mirai caught the hint of approval in his eyes. That was quite a technique. Thank you. Also quite a risk. Krell bones are dense. If his arm hadn't broken, yours would have. I know. Kyung finished his scan and administered something that made the pain in Mirai's wrist fade. You're lucky. And skilled. Try not to break any more arms this week. After he left, Harin pulled Mirai aside. We need to talk. My quarters. Both of you. They followed her through the quiet corridors to the faculty section. Harin's quarters were larger than student housing, with actual windows showing the stars outside. She gestured for them to sit. That stunt you pulled, Harin began, then paused. It's going viral. What? June asked. Harin pulled up a holographic display. It showed footage from the cafeteria, captured from multiple angles by various students' recording devices. The video of Mirai breaking Raxel's arm was already spreading across the galactic network. Xenobiology departments on 50 worlds are analyzing this, Harin said. The consensus is shock. Human biomechanics are being completely reassessed. You just proved that humans can compete physically with species we thought were far superior. I just used leverage, Mirai said. Basic physics, basic to you maybe. But most species never developed grappling or wrestling. They rely on natural weapons. The concept of using an opponent's strength against them is new to them. June leaned forward, studying the footage. Look at the view counts. Millions already. And the comments what he started reading. This is impossible. Humans are prey species. This must be fake. How did she do that? Some are calling for human restrictions, Harin said seriously. If humans are this dangerous, maybe they shouldn't be allowed in certain programs, or certain occupations. That's ridiculous, Mirai said. I won one-arm wrestling match. You broke the arm of an apex predator using nothing but technique. To much of the galaxy, that's terrifying. Harin looked at her intently. What you did tonight will have consequences. Some good, some bad. Are you prepared for that? Mirai thought about it. About the years of training. About learning to survive in places that wanted her dead. About every human who'd ever been dismissed as weak or soft or lesser. Yes, she said. I'm prepared. The next morning, everything had changed. When Mirai entered the training hall, conversation stopped. Students moved aside as she passed. The looks weren't mocking anymore. Some showed respect. Others showed fear. A few showed calculation, like they were trying to figure out how she'd done it. Instructor Vector approached her before class began. His expression was unreadable. You made me look foolish, he said quietly. That wasn't my intention. No. Your intention was to prove that my assessment of humans was wrong. He studied her. You succeeded. The question now is what we do about it. We? Mirai asked carefully. I have been teaching combat for 30 years. I have trained students from over 200 species. I thought I understood the principles of fighting. Vector's tail swayed behind him. You showed me I was wrong. That makes you either a dangerous anomaly or a teacher I can learn from. I prefer to believe the latter. Before Mirai could respond, Vector addressed the entire class. Change of plans. Today we will study human combat techniques, specifically the concept of grappling and leverage-based fighting. A ripple went through the students. Some looked interested. Others looked skeptical. Mirai, demonstrate, Vekator said. She stepped onto the training mat. I need a volunteer. No one moved. Finally, Sila, the manted student, clicked forward. I will try. Thank you, Mirai said. She appreciated the courage. I'm going to put you in a simple hold. Try to break free using your strength. She moved behind Sila and applied a basic rear choke, being careful with the alien's different anatomy. Sila had 4 arms and incredible speed, but once the hold was locked, none of that mattered. Sila struggled. Her arms flailed, her legs kicked, but she couldn't break the grip. After 30 seconds, she tapped Mirai's arm in submission. How? Sila asked, stepping away and rubbing her throat equivalent. I am faster than you. I have more limbs. Position matters more than strength or speed, Mirai explained. If I control your structure, your advantages don't help. This is what humans learned on Earth. We weren't the strongest or fastest, so we learned to fight smart. Over the next hour, Mirai demonstrated various techniques. Joint locks, throws that used an opponent's momentum against them, chokes that cut off blood flow regardless of species. Each technique made the same point. Proper application of leverage could overcome superior strength. Vekator watched intently, asking questions. His understanding of combat was being rebuilt from the ground up. By the end of the session, a line had formed. Students wanting to spar with Mirai, to test themselves against human techniques. She accepted every challenge. First came a Threxian named Gorak. He was massive, easily weighing 4 times what Mirai did. Their match lasted 2 minutes before she got him in an arm lock that forced him to submit. Then a Scar warrior, whose natural armor should have made her untouchable. But armor had gaps at the joints and Mirai knew exactly where to apply pressure. Then another Krell, smaller than Raxel but still formidable. This time Mirai used a leg sweep that took advantage of the species' high center of gravity and poor lateral balance. Match after match. Some she won quickly. Others took longer. A few actually beat her, proving that technique had limits. But even in losing, she showed that humans could compete. By the end of the week, something fundamental had shifted in the academy. The advanced combat classes were open to humans, not as a mercy but as an acknowledgement that they belonged there. Mirai found herself teaching as much as training. Students sought her out with questions. How do you fight someone bigger? How do you overcome natural weapons? How do you turn weakness into advantage? Jun's research took a new direction. He started documenting human fighting systems, translating concepts into forms other species could understand. His paper, Deathworld Adaptation, Combat Without Claws, was requested by military academies across the galaxy. Professor Harin reported that human enrollment applications were flooding in from across known space. What had been seen as a charity program was now viewed as an opportunity to learn valuable skills. But not everyone was happy. One evening, 3 weeks after the famous arm wrestling match, Mirai was approached by Thrak, the Krell who'd been Raxel's main rival. You humiliated my friend, Thrak said. He was alone, which was unusual for Krell. They normally traveled in groups. He humiliated himself, Mirai replied calmly. I just defended mine. You broke his arm. He agreed to the match. He knew the risks. Thrak studied her for a long moment. I want to understand. How did you do it? Not just the technique. How did you have the courage to face him? You knew you could die. Mirai considered the question. On Earth, humans spent millions of years being hunted. We were prey for things bigger, stronger, faster. We should have gone extinct. Instead, we learned. We adapted. We found ways to survive. She met Thrak's eyes. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. That's what Earth taught us. Your world made you warriors. Our world made us survivors. There's a difference, Thrak nodded slowly. Raxel is recovering. He's asked to speak with you. Why? I think he wants to learn. They found Raxel in his quarters. His arm was in a regeneration cast, the bone slowly being repaired by advanced medical technology. He looked up when Mirai entered and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Shame. I underestimated you, he said quietly. I thought humans were weak because you lacked our natural gifts. I was wrong. Yes, Mirai said simply. You were. I want to learn what you know. How to fight like humans fight. 2 months after the incident in the cafeteria, Mirai was teaching her 5th class of the day. The training hall was packed with students from a dozen different species, all trying to master a basic hip throw. It was harder than it looked, especially for species with different body structures. "Remember," she called out, "you're not using strength. You're using their own weight and momentum. Position first, then movement." A young Volcar student, all four of his arms tangled up in confusion, raised a hand. "Instructor, my species has never fought this way. We use our arms to strike from distance. Why would we get close?" "Because sometimes you don't have a choice," Mirai said, walking over. "Show me your natural fighting stance." The Volcar demonstrated, all four arms up in a defensive web. It was actually quite effective for keeping attackers away. "Good defense," Mirai acknowledged. "But what if someone gets past it?" She moved quickly, slipping through the four-armed guard and positioning herself behind the Volcar. "Now what?" The student tried to turn, but Mirai was already controlling his center of balance. A gentle push and he was on the mat, completely off balance. "Now you need grappling," she said, helping him up. "Every fighting style has gaps. Humans learned to exploit those gaps because we had to." The class continued until Instructor Vector entered. His expression was serious. "Mirai, Professor Harin needs to see you immediately." "Council chambers." A murmur went through the students. The council chambers meant something official. "Something important?" "Class dismissed," Mirai said. "Practice the throws we covered carefully." She followed Vector through the station's corridors. "What's this about?" "The Galactic Council has been debating the human question for weeks," Vector said. "Your actions started something they can't ignore. Today they make their decision." "Decision about what?" "About whether humans represent a threat to galactic peace." Mirai stopped walking. "What?" Vector turned to face her. "Think about it from their perspective. For centuries, humans were dismissed as weak. Suddenly you prove that a single human with proper training can defeat apex predators. The Council is asking, if one human can do this, what could millions of trained humans do? That's insane. We're not planning to attack anyone. Fear doesn't require logic." Vector's tail swayed. "Come. Professor Harin will explain more." The council chambers were on the station's highest level, with views of the space surrounding them. Professor Harin was there, along with several other humans Mirai didn't recognize. One was a military officer with admiral insignia on his uniform. "Mirai, this is Admiral Taeyang," Harin said. "He's Earth's liaison to the Galactic Council." The admiral studied her with sharp eyes. "So you're the one who's caused all this trouble?" "Sir, I was just defending my friend by breaking an alien warrior's arm in front of half the academy." Taeyang's expression was hard to read. "Do you understand the situation you've created?" Instructor Vector mentioned something about the Council viewing humans as a threat. "It's worse than that." Taeyang pulled up a holographic display showing news feeds from across the galaxy. "Your match has been analyzed by xenobiologists, military strategists, and politicians. The debate is galaxy-wide. Some species are fascinated and want to learn from humans. Others are terrified and want us restricted." Mirai watched the feed scroll past. Some showed her demonstration matches, analyzed frame by frame. Others showed military experts discussing human combat potential. One feed was from a species she didn't recognize, with text her translator rendered as, "the prey species that hunts predators." "There's a formal inquiry," Harin said quietly. "The Council wants to understand how humans survived Earth, what makes us different, whether we represent a danger to other species." "And if they decide we're dangerous?" Mirai asked. "Restrictions," Taeyang said bluntly. "Limits on where humans can travel, what occupations we can hold, what training we can receive. Some council members are pushing for complete military prohibition. No humans in combat roles anywhere. That's discrimination, that's politics." Taeyang sighed. "The council meets in 3 hours. You, Professor Harin, and I will testify. They want to hear directly from you about human capabilities." "What should I say?" "The truth," Harin said. "But carefully. We need to make them understand that humans aren't a threat, while also not downplaying what you've accomplished." The next few hours passed in preparation. Taeyang briefed Mirai on council protocols. Harin helped her organize her thoughts. June appeared at some point, offering moral support. "You've got this," he said. "Just be yourself. Honest and direct." What if honest and direct scares them? Then they need to be scared. Better to know the truth than to live in ignorance. Finally, the time came. The council chambers were enormous, with seats arranged in a spiral pattern that allowed all delegates to see each other. Representatives from over 300 species were present, their forms ranging from the familiar humanoid shapes to beings that seemed to exist partially in other dimensions. Chancellor Voth, an ancient crystalline being, presided over the meeting. Its voice resonated through the chamber without any visible sound-producing organ. "We convene to address the question of human classification," Voth announced. "Are humans a prey species that evolved intelligence, or are they something more dangerous? We have called witnesses to provide testimony." A Krell delegate stood first. Mirai was surprised to see it was Thrak. "Honored Council, I am Thrak of the Krell Protectorate. I have trained with the human called Mirai. I have seen her defeat members of my species through technique and knowledge. She is not weak. Neither are humans." Another delegate, a Threxian, stood. "My nephew Gorak was defeated by this same human. He is a champion wrestler on our homeworld, yet she beat him using methods we do not understand. This is concerning." More delegates spoke, some praising human adaptability, others expressing fear. The debate went in circles for over an hour before Chancellor Voth called for the human witnesses. Taeyang testified first, providing military and historical context. He explained Earth's history of warfare, survival, and adaptation. His testimony was professional and thorough. Professor Harin spoke about xenobiology, comparing human physiology to other species. She explained how Earth's harsh conditions had forged humans into masters of adaptation, rather than specialists in any one area. Then it was Mirai's turn. She walked to the central platform, acutely aware of hundreds of alien eyes watching her, some curious, some hostile, some afraid. "Human Mirai," Chancellor Voth said, "you have demonstrated combat capabilities that surprised the galactic community. Explain how your species survived your Deathworld." Mirai took a breath. "Truth and careful. Earth is classified as a Class 9 Deathworld. It's accurate. Our planet tried to kill us constantly. Predators, diseases, climate, natural disasters. Humans survived not because we were strong, but because we learned." "Learned what?" asked a delegate that looked like a floating jellyfish. "Everything." Mirai gestured to the assembled council. "Every species here has natural advantages. Claws, armor, venom, size, speed. Humans have almost none of those. What we have is the ability to learn from anything and anyone. We studied predators to understand their weaknesses. We developed tools to compensate for our lack of natural weapons. We created fighting systems that assumed we'd face opponents stronger than us. So you admit humans are naturally weaker?" This from a reptilian delegate. "In raw strength? Yes. In adaptability? No, humans aren't the strongest species, but we're the most versatile. That's how we survived." "And this versatility," another delegate interjected, "doesn't it make you dangerous? If humans can defeat apex predators through technique, what stops them from using this ability aggressively?" Mirai felt the weight of the question. This was the real issue, fear. "The same thing that stops you," she said simply. "Culture, ethics, law. Humans have the capacity for violence, yes. So does every species in this room. The question isn't whether we can fight. It's whether we choose to." "Beautiful words," the reptilian delegate hissed. "But you chose to break Raxel's arm. I chose to defend my friend and defend human dignity. Raxel chose to issue a challenge. He chose to continue applying pressure even when it was clear he was losing. I gave him multiple opportunities to submit. He refused." Mirai looked directly at the delegate. "I used the minimum force necessary to win a match that he started." "That's not aggression. That's self-defense," murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others looked unconvinced. Chancellor Voth raised a crystalline limb for silence. "Human Mirai, do you believe your species poses a threat to galactic peace?" This was it. The central question. Mirai thought about every lesson Earth had taught her. About survival and adaptation. About knowing when to fight and when to cooperate. "No," she said clearly. "Humans don't pose a threat to peace. We pose a challenge to assumptions. For centuries, the galaxy has believed that physical strength determines hierarchy, that predators are superior to prey, that natural weapons are necessary for survival. Humans prove those assumptions wrong. We're living evidence that intelligence, cooperation, and learning can overcome physical disadvantages." She paused, making sure she had everyone's attention. "If that's threatening, then the problem isn't humans. The problem is 5 years had changed everything. Mirai stood in the same training hall where she'd once been relegated to practice dummies, but now the space was filled with advanced equipment and students from across the galaxy. The walls displayed plaques honoring graduates of what was now officially called the Human Combat Theory program. She was 32 now, no longer a student but head of applied combat studies. Her role had expanded far beyond teaching fighting techniques. She'd become a bridge between humanity and hundreds of other species, proving that strength came in many forms. Instructor! A young Krell ran up, breathless with excitement. I finally got the arm lock working on Gorak. He actually tapped out. Mirai smiled. Good work. Remember to release immediately when they tap. Safety first. The young Krell nodded and ran back to practice. Mirai watched him go, still sometimes amazed at how normal this had become. Krell learning from humans, predators and prey training side by side. The galaxy had changed, or maybe it had just started seeing clearly. June entered the hall now wearing the insignia of a full professor. His linguistics work had become foundational to interspecies training programs. He'd cataloged combat terminology across over 400 languages and created a universal system for teaching fighting concepts across species barriers. You have a visitor, he said. Actually, you have about 30 visitors. The new human exchange group just arrived. Already? I thought they weren't coming until next week. Earth's military academy accelerated the program. They're eager to get their candidates trained. June grinned. You're famous now. Everyone wants to learn from the woman who broke the predator's arm. I wish people would remember the other parts too, Mirai said. The teaching, the bridge building, they remember. But the arm breaking makes a better story. She followed him to the docking bay where the new students were gathering. 30 young humans, all looking nervous and excited in equal measure. Behind them, Admiral Tae Yang oversaw their arrival, looking exactly as stern as he had 5 years ago. Instructor Mirai, he greeted formally, then dropped the formality and smiled. It's good to see you. Earth sends its best this year. I'm sure they're all capable, Mirai said, studying the group. They looked young, but she'd been young once too. Young and angry and determined to prove something. One of the students, a young woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Instructor, I'm Ren. I studied your techniques at the military academy. I've watched every recording of your demonstrations. It's an honor to learn from you directly. The honor is mine, Mirai said. But remember, I'm not teaching you how to fight like me. I'm teaching you how to think about fighting. Every person develops their own style. But the principles are the same? Another student asked eagerly. The principles are universal. Leverage positioning, understanding anatomy, and using technique to overcome superior strength. Those work for any species against any opponent. She addressed the whole group. You're here because humanity needs ambassadors. Not just warriors, but teachers. Every one of you will leave here and spread what you've learned to your own communities. That's the real mission. The orientation took most of the day. Mirai showed the new students around, introduced them to alien classmates, and explained the program structure. It was routine now, but she still felt a surge of pride seeing humans integrate so naturally into the galactic community. That evening, she had dinner with some of her longest-serving students. Scylla, the mantid who'd been the first to volunteer 5 years ago, was now an instructor herself. Thrak had graduated and joined the Krell Protectorate's training division. Even Gorak, the Threxian she'd defeated early on, had become a champion of human combat techniques on his homeworld. Do you ever think about that first week? Scylla asked, her translator rendering her clicks into perfect Korean for Mirai's benefit. When everyone thought humans were weak? Sometimes, Mirai admitted. Mostly I think about how much energy we wasted on assumptions. The galaxy is better for being wrong, Thrak rumbled. He was massive, even for a Krell, but he'd learned to move with surprising grace. My people were arrogant. We thought strength was everything. You taught us humility. I broke your friend's arm, Mirai said dryly. Yes, best thing that ever happened to him. Thrak's laughter was a deep rumble. Raxel is teaching now too. Did you hear? He has a school on our homeworld dedicated to human combat principles, very popular with young Krell who want to prove themselves. Mirai hadn't known that. She'd stayed in touch with Raxel occasionally over the years, but he'd been busy with his own journey. It pleased her to know he'd found his path. After dinner, she retreated to her quarters. The space was larger now, befitting her position, with windows that showed the eternal darkness of space dotted with distant stars. She'd put up a few personal items over the years. A photo of her and June from their first day at the academy, a ceremonial blade given to her by the Scar Warrior Council, a plaque from Earth's Global Defense Command thanking her for her service. A message notification blinked on her console. She opened it to find an official communication from Earth's government. They wanted her to return, not permanently but for a special assignment. Training the first interspecies military exchange unit. Humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, building something new. It was tempting to go home to see Earth again after 5 years in space. But her work here wasn't finished. There were still students to teach, bridges to build, assumptions to break. She composed her response, politely declining for now, but offering to send recommendations. Ren, the eager new student, might be perfect for that role in a few years. The next morning brought a surprise. Mireille arrived at the training hall to find it packed with students but also with observers. Chancellor Voth was there, its crystalline form reflecting the overhead lights. So were various council delegates and academy officials. "What's happening?" she asked June quietly. "Surprise ceremony. They're presenting you with the Galactic Service Medal, first human ever to receive it." Mireille felt her stomach drop. She hated ceremonies and speeches. She was a teacher, not a politician. But Chancellor Voth was already speaking, its voice resonating through the hall. 5 years ago, a human student challenged our assumptions about strength, combat, and species hierarchy. Today, we honor that student, now instructor Mireille, for her contributions to interspecies understanding and her pioneering work in adaptive combat theory. The council delegate, who'd been most skeptical of humans 5 years ago, stepped forward. "I once feared that humans represented a threat," the reptilian being admitted. "I was wrong. They represent an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to move beyond our limited understanding of what makes a species valuable." More speeches followed, testimonials from students she'd taught, from instructors she'd trained, from military leaders whose forces now incorporated human techniques. It was overwhelming and humbling. Finally, Mireille was called forward to receive the medal. It was a simple thing, a crystal suspended in a force field, but it represented acceptance at the highest level. "Thank you," she said simply, "but I didn't do this alone. Every student who trusted me, every instructor who was willing to learn, every species that opened their mind to new possibilities contributed to this. We changed the galaxy together." As the ceremony concluded and people dispersed, Mireille found herself approached by a familiar figure. Raxel. The Krell who'd challenged her 5 years ago, whose broken arm had started everything. He looked different now, older but also somehow softer, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "Congratulations, instructor," he said formally. "Thank you, Raxel. I heard you're teaching now." "Yes. And I tell my students about you every day, about the small human who broke my arm and my pride together." He paused. "I was an idiot. You were young and confident. There's a difference, perhaps. But I learned something important from you. That strength without wisdom is useless. That dismissing others based on appearance is the greatest weakness." Raxel looked at her seriously. "You changed my life. You changed my entire species' understanding of themselves. Thank you." After he left, June appeared at her side. "You know, when we arrived here 5 years ago, I never imagined this." "Imagined what?" "That you'd break an alien's arm and accidentally revolutionize galactic military theory." He smiled. "Though I should have known. You've always been good at exceeding expectations." The afternoon training session was with the new human students. Mireille put them through basic drills, assessing their skills and understanding. They were good, she noted, well trained by Earth standards. But they had much to learn about fighting across species lines. As the session progressed, she noticed alien students gathering to watch. This was common now. New arrivals always drew attention, especially human arrivals. The galaxy wanted to see what Earth's warriors could do. One of the watching aliens, a young Krell bigger even than Threk, made a comment Mireille couldn't quite hear. But she saw several new human students tense up. She recognized the body language. "Challenge accepted. Hold," she called out, stopping the drill. She walked over to the Krell student. "Is there something you'd like to say?" The young Krell looked defiant. "I heard stories about the human instructor who is supposed to be tough. But looking at you, at all humans, I don't see..."